Have you ever looked at your own life and quietly thought, maybe I'm just not cut out for success? Maybe you poured your heart into a business idea, stayed up night after night planning it, only to watch it collapse. Maybe you studied relentlessly for an exam that meant everything to you, sacrificed sleep, weekends, your peace, and still walked away with failure staring back at you. Maybe you did everything right, gave everything you had, and the outcome still told you it wasn't enough. And now, every time the thought of starting again crosses your mind, there's that familiar voice, low, sharp, relentless, whispering, what if you fail again? What if that fear has paralyzed you? What if your past mistakes have wrapped themselves around your present, refusing to let go? If any of that sounds familiar, then listen closely, because this story was meant for you. There was once a young man who failed so often that failure became his identity. People didn't just doubt him, they labeled him unreliable, untalented, a lost cause. Eventually, he stopped arguing. He accepted the verdict, until one unexpected conversation with a complete stranger shattered everything he believed about failure, success, and his own worth. What he learned that day didn't simply redirect his life. It permanently changed how he faced every obstacle that followed. So stay with me until the end. This might change the way you see your own struggles. In a crowded, fast-moving city where ambition glittered on every street and success looked effortless from the outside, lived a 27-year-old man named Daniel. Daniel wasn't lazy. He wasn't careless. He had dreams, enormous ones. He wanted to build something that mattered, something that proved once and for all that he wasn't invisible, that he was capable of more than people assumed. But there was a painful pattern he couldn't escape. Everything he tried fell apart. While still in college, Daniel launched a small online business selling handmade crafts. He believed in it. He invested his time, his energy, and every dollar he had saved. 6 months later, it was gone. The business failed. His savings disappeared. And with them, a piece of his confidence vanished too. And this was only the beginning. After graduation, Daniel went after his dream job at a well-known tech company. For the first time in a long while, things seemed to align. He passed the early screenings, impressed the managers, and made it all the way to the final interview. Then the email arrived. They had chosen someone else. He told himself it was just bad luck. So he tried again, this time with a new startup idea. A local food delivery app designed specifically for his neighborhood. Daniel poured everything into it. 16-hour workdays, 8 straight months of effort, no weekends, no breaks. In the end, only 20 people signed up. The app never took off. It didn't crash loudly or dramatically. It simply faded away, unnoticed. Next came the job applications. 3 different companies, 3 promising interviews, 3 rejections, all after the second round. By the time Daniel turned 27, his resume didn't tell a story of growth or progress. It read like a timeline of attempts that went nowhere. Meanwhile, his former classmates were moving forward. Promotions, new cars, first homes, engagement photos, celebration dinners. And Daniel? Daniel was living alone in a cramped apartment, dragging himself each day to a job he despised, feeling like he was sinking deeper into a life that never seemed to improve. It felt as if everyone else had learned a secret rulebook to success, and he had somehow been excluded. His mother would call, her voice soft, careful not to hurt him. Daniel, she'd ask gently, have you thought about choosing something more stable? Maybe entrepreneurship just isn't for you. Online, former classmates shared their achievements. Every notification felt sharp, personal, like a reminder of everything he hadn't become. At night, Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling, his mind replaying every mistake on an endless loop. The business that collapsed, the opportunities that slipped away, the ideas that never had a chance to grow. And the hardest part wasn't the failures themselves. It was the story he had begun to believe. I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. Maybe I should stop trying. One rainy Tuesday evening, Daniel sat alone in a small coffee shop, his laptop glowing faintly in front of him. Moments earlier, another rejection email had arrived, this time from a company he was sure would say yes. The message was polite, professional, emotionless. We've decided to move forward with other candidates. He closed the laptop slowly and stared out the window as rain traced long lines down the glass. And for the first time in years, something inside him finally gave way. Not anger, not frustration, just emptiness. Barely louder than the hum of the cafe, he whispered to himself, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm just not built for this. Maybe it's time to stop. He imagined giving up, choosing safety over dreams, stability over ambition. No more hope, no more disappointment, just a quiet, predictable life. And strangely, it felt like relief and defeat at the same time. As Daniel sat there staring into nothing, an older man at the nearby table slowly turned toward him. The man looked to be in his early 60s, well dressed, composed. His eyes were warm, steady, the kind that had seen a lot of life and survived it. He had been typing on his own laptop, but at some point he noticed the quiet collapse happening across from him. "Excuse me," the man said softly. "I don't mean to interrupt, but I couldn't help noticing." He paused for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "You look like someone who's been carrying a very heavy burden for a very long time." Daniel looked up, caught off guard. He didn't know this man. They had never met. But there was no pity in his voice, no judgment, just calm, genuine concern. Something inside Daniel cracked. He hesitated. Then the words poured out faster than he could stop them. "I just got rejected again. Another job, another no, another thing that didn't work. I feel like everything I touch falls apart. Like I've failed at everything I've ever tried." The older man listened without interrupting. He nodded slowly, as if Daniel's story was painfully familiar. Then he leaned forward slightly and asked a question Daniel had never heard phrased that way before. "Tell me," the man said, "do you know the difference between failure and a lesson?" Daniel blinked, confused. "What?" "A failure," the man continued, "is when you try something, it doesn't work, and you stop. A lesson is when you try something, it doesn't work, and you learn what to do differently the next time." He paused, letting the words settle. "You haven't failed, son," he said quietly. "You've been collecting lessons." Daniel stared at him, trying to process that. "Collecting lessons," he repeated, "but I've tried so many times. Nothing worked." The man smiled, not kindly but knowingly. "May I ask you something?" "What's your name?" "Daniel." "Daniel," the man said, extending his hand slightly, "I'm Robert, and I want to tell you a little about my life." Robert leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting for a moment, as if revisiting old memories. "When I was your age," he said, "I had failed at 7 different businesses." Daniel's eyes widened. "7," Robert repeated. "Every single one collapsed. Each one cost me money, time, friendships, even relationships." He exhaled slowly. "People told me I was delusional. My own father begged me to get a real job. I was buried in debt, living in a tiny rented room, surviving on instant noodles night after night." Daniel looked at him again, really looked at him. This confident, successful-looking man, this calm presence. None of it matched the story. "But here's what I learned," Robert continued, his voice steady. And Daniel leaned forward, unaware that his life was about to change. "Every one of those so-called failures taught me something essential," Robert said calmly. "The first business taught me how to truly understand customers. The second taught me the brutal importance of cash flow. The third showed me how dangerous the wrong partnerships can be. The fourth, it taught me how to stand back up." He paused, letting the silence do the work. "By the time I launched my 8th venture, I wasn't starting from nothing," he continued. "I was starting with the combined wisdom of 7 collapsed businesses." He smiled faintly. "That 8th one succeeded, not because I suddenly became smarter, but because I finally understood what didn't work." Robert reached for a napkin and uncapped his pen. He drew a clean, straight line rising diagonally upward. "This," he said, tapping the line, "is how most people imagine success. Smooth, predictable. You work hard, and life rewards you in a straight climb." Then he wrinkled the napkin slightly and drew again. This time the line jumped up, dropped down, zigzagged sideways, dipped backward, yet slowly climbed higher overall. "But real success looks like this," he said. "Up, down, stuck, falling, recovering, messy, confusing, full of what you call failures." He traced the general upward direction with his finger. "But when you zoom out, you're still moving higher." Robert looked directly at Daniel. "There's a concept in psychology called a growth mindset," he explained. "It's the belief that your abilities aren't fixed. They're expandable. They grow through effort, mistakes, and learning." He leaned in slightly. "People with a growth mindset don't see failure as evidence that they're incapable. They see it as evidence that they're not capable yet." He emphasized the last word. "Every rejection you've received, That's data. Every business that collapsed, that's feedback. Every interview you didn't pass, that's practice. Robert reached into his bag and pulled out a small, worn notebook. He slid it across the table toward Daniel. I want you to do something for me, he said. Write down every failure you've ever had, every single one. Daniel hesitated. Next to each one, Robert continued, write what it taught you, what went wrong, what you do differently, what skill you gained because of it. Daniel stared at the notebook, unsure. Because here's the truth, Robert said gently. You're not failing. You're experimenting. You're refining. You're getting closer. Robert stood, preparing to leave, and placed a firm but reassuring hand on Daniel's shoulder. Thomas Edison tested over 10,000 designs before the light bulb worked, he said. He didn't call them failures. He called them discoveries. Then Robert smiled. So tell me, Daniel, are you a failure? Or are you just a few experiments away from your breakthrough? That night, Daniel sat alone at his desk, Robert's notebook open in front of him. At first, his hand froze. Writing down his failures felt like reopening scars that hadn't fully healed. But slowly, he began. Business number 1, handmade craft store. What went wrong? No market research, no marketing plan, ran out of money. For the first time, Daniel didn't feel ashamed. He felt curious, and that changed everything. What did I learn? Daniel paused, then wrote, ideas must be validated before money is invested. Marketing matters more than the product itself. Then he moved to the next line. Dream job rejection. Attempt 1. What went wrong? Didn't prepare deeply enough for technical questions. Let nerves take control. What I learned. Preparation beats raw talent. Interviews are a skill, and skills can be trained, line by line, failure by failure. Daniel kept writing, and something unexpected happened. As the words filled the pages, the tight pressure in his chest slowly began to loosen. The shame softened, the heaviness lifted. These weren't failures anymore. They were lessons, data points, building blocks. He saw it clearly now. Every rejected application had sharpened his interview skills. Every collapsed business had taught him something real about entrepreneurship. Every setback had quietly strengthened his resilience. He wasn't behind. He had been laying a foundation. The next morning, Daniel woke up with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. He made a decision. He gathered everything he had learned, the customer research from his first business, the hard cash flow lessons from the second, the marketing insights from the third. And he began working on a new idea. But this time, something was different. This time, obstacles didn't feel like proof that he wasn't good enough. They felt like problems waiting to be solved. When his first prototype failed, he didn't quit. He asked, what is this trying to teach me? When investors turned him down, he didn't spiral into self-doubt. He asked, what feedback are they giving me? 3 months later, Daniel launched a beta version of his product. 10 people signed up. 10. To anyone else, that number would have felt discouraging. But Daniel remembered, his last app had 20 users before it disappeared completely. This time, instead of panicking, he talked to all 10 users. He listened. He asked questions. He made changes. 6 months later, there were 100 users. 9 months later, 500. The product wasn't perfect, but it was growing. Because Daniel was growing, one afternoon, Daniel received a message on LinkedIn. It was from Robert. How's the lesson collection going? A smiling emoji followed the words. Daniel smiled to himself and typed back, I'm on experiment 47. Still no light bulb yet, but I'm getting closer. A moment later, Robert replied, that's exactly how it works. Keep going. And for the first time in his life, Daniel truly believed he would. My friend, Daniel's story was never just about startups or careers. It was never only about business. It's about you. It's about me. It's about every single person who has ever stood at the edge of trying and stepped back because they were terrified of failing. Here's a truth most people never hear. Failure is not real. Feedback is. Every time something doesn't work out, you are not failing. You are discovering what doesn't work, so you can eventually find what does. And if you remember nothing else from this story, remember these 3 things. First, change the language you use with yourself. Stop saying, I failed. Start saying, I learned. Stop saying it didn't work. Start saying that approach didn't work. Let me try another one. Words shape belief. Belief shapes action. Second, document your lessons. Do exactly what Robert asked Daniel to do. Write them down. Every setback, ask yourself, what did this teach me? What skill did I gain from this? How am I more prepared now than I was before? What will I do differently next time? If you don't extract the lesson, you repeat the pain. Third, understand what success is really built on. Thomas Edison didn't fail 10,000 times. James Dyson didn't fail 526 times before his vacuum worked. J.K. Rowling wasn't rejected by 12 publishers. She was refining her path. They weren't lucky. They were persistent. They simply refused to label experiments as failures. So here's my challenge to you. Think of one thing in your life that didn't work out. One attempt that fell apart. One moment that made you question your worth. Now reframe it. What did it teach you? What muscle did it strengthen? What did it prepare you for? Write it down. Because the moment you stop seeing setbacks as proof of inadequacy and start seeing them as lessons, everything changes. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not a failure. You are a scientist running experiments. You are an inventor testing prototypes. You are a student collecting data. And every single setback is moving you closer to the breakthrough that hasn't arrived yet. If this story shifted the way you see your struggles, let me know. Leave a comment below. What's one failure you're choosing to see as a lesson today? Share this video with someone who's scared to try, not because they lack ability, but because they fear the outcome. Sometimes, all it takes to change a life is a new perspective. Like this video. Subscribe for more stories that challenge how you think and help you grow. And remember this, there is no such thing as failure, only lessons not fully learned. Only experiments not finished. Only challenges shaping you into something stronger. Your light bulb is coming. Keep experimenting.